Hello, I'm Eric Light, and you're inside Chor Leoni. Hello and welcome to Inside Chor Leoni. My name is Eric Light, Artistic Director of Chor Leoni, and we are so glad to have you here with us this week. We have special guest Sam Kreidenweis, who is one of the baritones for our upcoming new professional ensemble, the Leonids. But before we get into that, I want to play a little bit of Chor Leoni for you this week. And this is a world premiere TTBB version of a piece by composer Marcus Garrett. And it is a setting of a work called My Heart Be Brave. The piece is both, I think, a very intimate work as well as one that is quite grand. I think the singers found this to be a really meaningful work, especially as we came back into singing after our pandemic hiatus. We premiered this work this last November for our Remembrance Day programs, and here is the world premiere recording of the TTBB version of My Heart Be Brave by Marcus Garrett.
Well, this is my first year in Chor Leoni, so when you're surrounded by 65 gentlemen who are singing, first of all, very pianissimo, My Heart Be Brave, and it just continues to be building all the way through until you finally culminate in a forte. There's power in doing what is right. It was an incredible experience. I've been singing it day after day since the November concert.
There's a part in the middle where the lyrics say "rise up," and it builds, at least for my voicing, the melody and harmony builds up on those lyrics, "rise up," and it's just warm and wonderful, and you get the impression that it keeps going even after that particular part and that particular section of the piece is finished, and I just relish that part every single time we sang it, and it was almost what I was looking for the entire concert, was that 1 or 2 bars where we were singing that. It was just absolutely amazing.
That was My Heart Be Brave by Marcus Garrett in the TTBB world premiere performance by Chor Leoni from last November, recorded right here at St. Andrew's Wesley United Church in downtown Vancouver. And yeah, you could tell we did it recently with all those masks still on, but you can still understand the beautiful words of that piece. And we thank Marcus so much for making that new version available to us. And it was a real joy to be able to come back to singing this fall with such a marvelous piece. So thank you, Marcus. As many of you know, we are starting a brand new endeavor here with Chor Leoni, and it's been a part of our Van Man Male Choral Summit. We have, for the past number of years, brought in professional ensembles to sing at our weekend festival that we do in the spring. We've had Chanticleer, Cantus, Take Six, and those have been wonderful experiences. But we really thought, what if we did this in-house? I became the director of that group, and what could we maybe achieve in terms of collaborations with Chor Leoni, as well as with our the connections and education that we could do with our My Voice and emerging choral artist educational programs. So we have decided this year to form a new professional group that meets kind of once a year called the Leonids. And I have had the absolute joy of cherry picking some of my favorite and best singers that I know of in North America to be a part of this 9-voice TTBB ensemble. And I want to welcome to the show this week one of the singers that we have in the lineup, a baritone that I've known, we've never worked together, but I've known of for a very long time. Please welcome Sam Kreidenweis. Hello, Sam.
Hello, everyone. It's very lovely to be here.
It's so good to have you here. We're bringing you here just a little bit ahead of time before May, so this is as close as you'll get for right now until we get the band together in May. First of all, your professional singing experience, especially ensemble singing experience, is quite varied and rich. Could you just rattle off, like, who have you sung with? I know this is total name dropping, but we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, sure, of course. So most recently, I used to sing with Cantus Vocal Ensemble. I still sing with Anúna over in Ireland and their male choral ensemble Manam. I sung with Skylark Vocal Ensemble, Conspirare, Fe Desert Chorale, the Phoenix Chorale. Those are a few of the bigger ones that I've had the pleasure of working with in the past.
It's a fantastic list, and I'm sure that has really kept you on your toes in terms of the variety of small group, etc., what terms of the repertoire is, etc. And you've actually been to a Van Man Male Choral Summit. You're one of the few people that has, because you were here with Cantus.
Yeah, it was one of the most exciting things about getting through this project is that I had a familiarity with it. You know, I've been there and I've participated in all of these master classes and seen what it can do to all of these young minds, and getting to work with all of the members of Chor Leoni itself. It's fun to have this new opportunity to come back and do something that I've done before, but just in a new context.
And we're so excited to have you. Before we get into a little bit more of your thoughts and feelings about all of this and get to know a little bit more about you, I want the folks at home to hear you. And this is a lovely performance of you with our friend Michael McGlynn and Anúna doing Gaudete. I know it's not Christmas time, but we'll pretend it is anyway. Could you set this up and maybe talk a little bit about, first of all, how you came to sing with Michael and Anúna, and maybe a little bit about this piece?
Sure, yeah. I'll answer the meeting Michael question first. So when I was still singing with the Phoenix Chorale, we did a concert of all Michael's music, and he actually came over and first did this concert with Kansas City Chorale because Charles Bruffy was the conductor of both ensembles at the time. So did it with them and then came and did it with us. And I've known about Michael for so long, as somebody who grew up in choral music, he was just such a household name to me. Yeah. So I was just kind of losing my mind that we weren't only not just singing his pieces, but that he was going to be there singing with us.
There he was, yeah.
And kind of the fun story about it is that we all took turns in Phoenix Chorale of providing snacks for rehearsals. And so when Michael came, I somehow managed to have that be my day of making snacks. And I kind of pride myself on being a pretty good cook, but that day, I kind of went all out and I made all this food, including Irish brown bread and soda bread, which was totally cheeky and really inappropriate and probably somewhat offensive in some level. But it ended up being that we just kind of got along. When he asked me, he was like, "Oh, you're a fan of my music. What's your favorite piece?" Which was an immediate test, but then I could, just list off the pieces that I was most attached to. And then it was not long after that, maybe 6 months, that I found myself on a 2-month tour of Japan and the Netherlands with them. So that's kind of how that came to be. And it was actually on that tour that I ended up singing Gaudete for the first time. I was actually a soprano who was doing the solo before it was assigned to me because she was on the Japan leg of the trip. And then when we switched to Europe, she wasn't part of that. So just right before we left Japan, he was like, "Okay, we have the next concert and you're going to do the solo," having never, ever sung this solo before. And that was just, throw you in the deep end.
Sort of like once in Royal David City when they just tap the boy on the shoulder and say, "Now you're on, in front of the world." Yeah.
Congratulations. And then it became, one of my favorite solos to do with Anúna. So.
And Michael's so charming, you can't say no anyway, right? It's just of course.
You could never actually look that man in the face and tell him no.
I believe it. I believe it heartily. Well, we'll pretend it's a bit of Christmas time here, and this is Sam Kreidenweis soloing on Michael McGlynn's arrangement of Gaudete.
Gaudete, gaudete, Christus est natus, ex Maria Virgine, gaudete, 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 Christus est natus, ex Maria Virgine, gaudete. Tempus aures gratiae, hoc quod aptabamus, carmina laetitia, devotere damus. Gaudete, gaudete, Christus est natus, ex Maria Virgine, gaudete, 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 Christus est natus, ex Maria Virgine, gaudete. Deus homo factus est, natura mirante, mundus renovatus est, a Christo regnante. Gaudete, gaudete, Christus est natus, ex Maria Virgine, gaudete, 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 Christus est natus, ex Maria Virgine, gaudete. Ezechelis morta clausa transitor, unde lux est orta salus invenitur. Gaudete, gaudete, Christus est natus, ex Maria Virgine, gaudete, 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 Christus est natus, ex Maria Virgine, gaudete. Ergo nostro calcius salatiam in lustro, benedicat Domino salus Regi nostro. Gaudete, gaudete, Christus est natus, ex Maria Virgine, gaudete, Maria Virgine gaudete.
And that was Gaudete, sung by Sam Kreidenweis and Anúna. Our friend Michael McGlynn was the arranger, music director for that. And who knew that just some soda bread would buy your way into solos with an esteemed Irish choral ensemble. Well done, sir. It was excellent.
It's like they say, the way to the choral ensemble you want is through everyone's stomach.
I didn't know this, and I'm taking notes right now. I want to go back. You've had all these extraordinary, solo singing experiences, ensemble singing experiences in your career and in your life. But let's rewind a bit. When did you get the bug? Was there that moment where all of the hairs on your body are standing on end, and you just knew that being a part of singing and a part of choirs needed to be something more than maybe just a vocation in your life?
Yeah, I think I'm a really lucky person in that I come from a family who isn't particularly musical. However, my parents are great lovers of music, and therefore they were extremely supportive of me doing music as an endeavor that I really got to do from a very young age. I went to a really small private Montessori school when I was growing up, and music was part of most of our lessons, especially in our younger years. And so it went from that to then being in an amateur children's chorus, which I had this really wonderful mentor. Her name was Tuva Thornton, and just watching how she could so easily not only get the sound that she was looking for from this group full of, very young kids, but teach us so much in that process. And that then, grew on to me going into high school and, being part of a really competitive choral program there. And then my unique part of my voice is that my voice didn't break from high soprano until I was 17.
Oh, wow.
And so then I kind of had this, a pretty traditional crash, change of my voice, and what came out was this thing that I really didn't recognize. So even though I knew that music needed to be part of my life in some way, I now was dealing with an instrument that was really foreign to me. So when I decided to go to college for music, I didn't know what that meant. Was I just gonna, could I be a recitalist? Did I have to go for opera? Maybe I wanted to do musical theater, but I'm really not a great dancer. So what was I gonna do?
maybe a dual threat, but not triple threat.
Maybe not. I mean, I could work some choreography, but please put me in the back.
Box step.
And so I think what really did choral music for me wasn't necessarily a single moment. But it was that it has threaded itself through literally every part of my musical DNA. It's always been the thing that I did. It wasn't necessarily singing that I did first. It was singing with other people that I did first.
Right.
And so I think that kind of, I went to my master's degree is specifically in opera because I followed what I thought I was supposed to do and, go do my master's immediately after my bachelor's program. And then, I was supposed to go do the Met competition and young artist programs. And that was the trajectory because that's what you're told.
That's what you do. Yeah.
That's what you do. And then I had a great teacher at Arizona State when I was in my master's who just said, have you ever thought about, going for choral music? Maybe it's not full time, but there's a lot of professional choral ensembles out there that are, gaining some real steam right now. Go audition for one. And that was actually when I got into the Phoenix Chorale. Right. And as soon as that ensemble and Charles's name was on my resume, it kind of just solidified my career path from then on out.
What has been your take? What has choral music taught you? Not necessarily as a musician, but how has it infused itself into you as a person or your outlook on this world?
That's a great question. I think, especially with the choral ensembles that I have had the pleasure of working with, it makes you realize that you, at any given moment, have to be willing to say something 27 different ways in the same room at the same time. That you really have to have a level of preparation that allows you to show up and have other people trust you, and also have you trust yourself that if something goes awry, you have the wherewithal, the knowledge, and the preparation to roll with that. I think it's made me, I don't consider myself to be a naturally collaborative person, but I would say that the times that I feel most at home and most connected to my art making is when I'm sharing a stage with other people. Because that energy of getting to create something with those around you, and just almost the danger that comes with that, because like I said before, there's just such a level of trust that is demanded of choral singing, that it's just, I mean, it's like this high flying act where
Yeah, walks the knife's edge, doesn't it, all the time?
Seriously,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, you know, when you go to Renaissance fairs and the jugglers are like, you know, throwing swords at each other, and you're just kind of trying not to kill each other. I mean, it's not that extreme, but I mean,
It sometimes feels like it.
It does. I mean, you know, there are, we all know those choral pieces where, like, if one thing goes wrong, it is derail, like, cannot recover.
That's right. I've been in the middle of a Josquin motet where one part comes in just that beat extra, and you're like, I have no idea where we are anymore. This is a whole new piece, and sometimes the polyphony is really interesting at that point. I want to turn that. Thank you for sharing that, because you know, the more and more I do this, and the more and more I'm doing the show, especially talking about choral music. It's like, yeah, there's sort of like that inside baseball sort of thing, but I think what's become, especially maybe even as the pandemic has taken some of the choral singing away from me and from all of us, you know, what's left? What are the takeaways? What can I do when I'm not doing choral singing that can inform my life? So thank you for sharing all of that, because I think there are real life lessons to be gleaned from this activity, you know, at whatever level you're doing it. I want to turn now to the Leonids. So, had this idea. You were one of the first people that I called up and talked to, and you were game for this. First of all, as you're looking at, maybe let's just talk about the roster that we've got put together here. You've, I assume, worked with some of these people, not worked with other of these people. What excites you about kind of the how we've set this up as far as the size of the group and who's in it?
Yeah, I have to tell you, Eric, even these many months later since we had that first conversation, it still feels a little surreal that this group of people is coming together to make music.
Sure does. Yeah.
I know about half of the people on this roster, and I've worked with each of them in slightly different contexts. I know them both from sharing stages with them, to personal conversations with them, to just watching how they, you know, share themselves on social media. And of course, at this point, I've now heard all of them because, you know,
because you're Googling. Yes.
Yeah, you want to hear what all these voices can do and what's going to be next to you.
Right.
You know, the magical part about all of this to me is that we're only coming together to do this once a year. So it's not like it's this ongoing thing where, you know, you kind of have more and more time to like figure out the logistics and the nuances of somebody's voice. Like, there's just this, I keep going back to trust, but I think that it's one of my favorite parts about collaborative music is that we all just get to come in, be super excited to work with each other, and just like hit the ground running with our stuff prepared so that we can just go make sound like we want to make sound. And I think that is one of the most incredible opportunities for all of us to share together, and then hopefully do for many more years.
Yes. As I see it, the hope is that we sort of, maybe we're not together, for 5 concerts a year, that we're, doing 5 weeks a year together, but to try to keep this stable of singers going over the course of it so that the relationships grow over a longer period of time. One thing I wanted to ask, because you have been a part of, Phoenix Chorale and Kansas City, and Conspirare, some of the fly-in groups. One of the things that is interesting to me, because I don't know too many groups that are doing sort of that model, but with 9 people. What excites you, and maybe what gives you apprehensions about like we're going to throw this all into like a chamber music situation?
Yeah, like that's going to be the sort of the dicey fun bit of it, right?
You're telling me.
Because I mean, there's nowhere to hide, especially with the repertoire that you've selected.
Yeah.
So I think that it's exciting to. I would say that because everyone that you have brought into this group is just so accomplished at what they do. When you do those fly-in groups, there's still a lot of familiarity. Like it's a lot of the same people working together. So
Yeah.
you kind of get to know each other from themselves and also how they fit in the context of that specific group, which, every time you fly into a different choir, you're walking into a different set of expectations because, one conductor is going to want something completely different than another. And your, pronunciation is going to have to change for that bit of German as compared to last week.
Right.
Where I think that this gets to be this fun collaborative moment when just a few voices come together to be very vulnerable with each other about, well, this is kind of how I prepared this. Can you explain why you didn't see it that way? And just kind of get to have that dialogue of like, how do we make a really honest product, but in a very efficient way?
And I think you've hit it on as I keep thinking about what that rehearsal process is going to be. It's balancing that, right? It's, I am going to be conducting, but a conductor is at best, a lot of times, a facilitator. I hope there's enough vision there for what the repertoire is trying to say when it's all put together, but that's kind of my job. But it is going to be trying to facilitate some of that chamber music process, but also at the end of the day say, we're just going to do it this way so we can get on with our lives and not talk about which part of our tongue is going to do the T, and et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
I've been in those conversations there.
Mm-hmm.
They go places or they don't.
It happens.
Yes. I want to also then ask you about the repertoire that you've seen. You now know what that all is. You've seen it. Is there anything in particular that stands out to you in terms of the repertoire you're going to be singing with the Leonids that you're excited about?
Yeah. So what I would say first about the repertoire is that I'm so excited to see so much of the repertoire be pieces I've never sung before. So there's a lot of new work to me personally on these programs. So that's first what I am the most geeked about. I will say that I am especially excited to sing the Tormies because like the concert that we were supposed to do just before the pandemic shut everything down with Cantus, that was on that program. And so, you prepare this, behemoth 10-minute long piece.
It's a symphony. Yeah. So for folks that don't know,
it is.
Yeah, it's
like
the
singing the Iliad.
Yeah, it's Songs of the Ancient Sea by Veljo Tormis, which is a 10-minute, almost symphonic work for TTBB voices. Yeah, I just wanted to let everybody go. Sorry, I probably talked over you there, but yeah.
No. I mean, you do kind of have to set it up because, I mean, aside from the length, I mean, it's in Estonian. So, there's just all these unfamiliar sounds to both the singer and the listener. But then on top of the language itself, there's all of these C sounds that the singers are expected to make. And I mean, he kind of gives you guidelines for what that should be, but not really. So there's a lot of personal interpretation that you have to like. When we all have to be seagulls at some point, you kind of have to figure out how does my voice create a seagull sound?
How is Sam's seagull sound different than Enrico's seagull? Exactly.
Exactly
yes.
that.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited that I finally get to perform that piece, having spent so much time learning it before. I was thrilled that it was the same part that I learned before that you put me
I'm
on.
glad. I'm glad. And yeah, once you prep, I'm glad someone has a head start on all of the Estonian. Thankfully, Tormis divides the texts up just enough so like the tenors get a lot of it here, and then you're doing some oohs. So it's not 10 minutes of straight Estonian for any one singer, but it is truly one of my favorite pieces to do. And not only is it I think it's a very cinematic work. I also think it's just a heartbreaking work. I think it's one of such great pathos and frankly tragedy. It's one of my favorites. So I'm excited to bring that back because it's been 16 years, 15 years since I've done it. So it's one of theirs there. I want to ask you one more question about the Leonids in particular. As we talked about, part of this is to put together a really awesome ensemble, but as you said, it's also about working with Chor Leoni and it's about working with our educational folks here. As you hope for, maybe not just even this year, but in total for what this project is, what would you hope a group like this, what would you hope its impact could be in a place like Vancouver or even beyond?
I'm really glad that you asked this question. What I said to you when you first called me about this project is I think that there is such a huge opportunity here to open up, if not change, the face of choral music as it pertains to male identifying voices. What I said before about how for so long and even still today, there is just this very one track way of getting through a vocal education if you want to go into it professionally. I just, having now gone through the steps of trying to break out of the box that I found myself in because I did what I thought I was supposed to do, which really took away so much of the fearlessness that I had as a young artist, when I was a kid and even a teenager, just that every day was just kind of this journey of like, what can my voice do? And the exploration of that was really fun and not scary. And also in some contexts, it wasn't frowned upon.
Right.
That, you were expected to go figure out.
It was welcomed. Yeah. Encouraged.
Go figure out what makes your voice unique. Don't figure out how your voice can fit the desires of your listeners. Go show them something new. That was not really the message that I was getting. And I think that there is just such an opportunity in this context where you not only have these amateurs who are so invested in this product, also getting to influence and shape young minds who can now take these memories and these teachings and apply them to so many other parts of their life and realize that there doesn't have to be this one track for how you get to what you want to do, whether it's music or not. So I think that's what I'm really hoping that we can not just do as a professional ensemble, but specifically for the Van Man Festival. Yeah. It's those young children, kids, the young people. That I'm so excited to be in a room with them, just talking about the many places you can go with this 1 week that we have together.
I've had so many hopes for putting together this ensemble, and you have solidified so many of my dreams in just what you've just said there. Thank you for that. And I hope I've done the work and also try to put together, I think we're putting together a group of, an ensemble of like-minded people. I think those values that you're and those hopes that you're articulating here are ones that we're sharing across the board. And I think just give us some time and some space to start doing that work. And I'm so excited to see what's going to happen. So thank you for such beautifully said sentiments there. from your mouth to God's ears, and I'm in the right place.
You are in the
this
right
is
place.
all right. Yeah. I want to play one more piece before we let you go here. And first of all, thank you so much for being with us. But this is I picked this piece because it's you singing with the group Cantus, which I have connections with. We've had connections with the Van Man. And you're featured in this. It's also a work by Don McDonald, who is our Chor Leoni's current composer in residence, who is writing a brand new work for Chor Leoni and the Leonids, which will be premiered in May when we're together. But this is a piece called When the Earth Stands Still. Could you tell us just maybe a little bit about your perspective on this piece and maybe this video?
Yeah, so I really love this piece, and I was so thrilled when I saw that Don was writing a piece for our festival, just because I think his music it's just so human. I think it's very easy to connect to, no matter what, where you're coming from. I think he really does a great job of writing music where you can come to it wherever you are.
He and Michael McGlynn have there's a common DNA, even though the music writing is not there. But there's that what you just said there. I think there's a commonality between those two composers. I feel that between those two.
Yeah, actually, I hadn't really made that connection before, but you're totally right. I really do think that these are composers who write for humans. Like they write music that people want to listen to and
sing. That's the whole experience. Yeah.
So this particular piece wrapped up a program that we were doing with Cantus called Alone Together. And it was, honestly, that was one of the most impactful programs of choral music that I've ever had the pleasure of singing. It was our touring program, my first year in the group. And it was really focused around, living in the era of social media and how we are more connected than we ever have been before. And yet there are these just crippling levels of isolation and not feeling connected to, the people that are around you that you have such easy access to on your fingers. And this was actually the piece that closed the program. And I think it just does such a wonderful job of, just giving a little bit of grace and humanity to, connecting better with the people who are around you and giving yourself a little bit of room to, not be perfect and embrace today and, for lack of a better word.
And one another. Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's also just a really gorgeous piece of music.
It really is. It really is. I had the joy of conducting this with our My Voice group last year, which we pivoted for a digital version of the My Voice thing. You can find that on our Chor Leoni channel. That I conducted 7 different choirs all differently, and then we put them together digitally, which was really cool. But it's an extraordinary work. Sam, I want to thank you so much for sharing this with us today, and I cannot wait to have you here in Vancouver in May.
Likewise. Honestly, Eric, I don't think I've ever been more, truly, and I choose this word very carefully, but I'm actually giddy about this project. I think it hits on everything that I want in music making from now on. It really does hit home all the things that I think we have every opportunity to have come true. So thanks for asking.
Thank you, and I hope we can live up to the promise of all of it. That's my goal. Thank you, Sam, and I want to play for you all right now. This is Cantus singing "When the Earth Stands Still" by Chor Leoni's composer in residence, Don McDonald.
Come listen in the silence of the moment before rain comes down. There's a deep sigh in the quiet of the forest and the tall trees ground. Now hold me, will you take the time to hold me and embrace the chill? Or miss me, will you take the time to miss me 'cause there's no use running, 'cause the storm's still coming, and you've been running for so many years, for so many years. Come listen in the silence of the moment before shadows fall. Feel the tremor of your heartbeat, matching heartbeat as we both dissolve. Now hold me, will you take the time to hold me and embrace the chill? Or miss me, take the time to miss me when the earth stands still. 'Cause there's no use running, 'cause the storm's still coming, and you've been running for so many years. So stay with me, having my arms like branches of a tree that shelter you for many years. So many years. So stay with me.
That was When the Earth Stands Still by composer Don McDonald, who is Chor Leoni's composer in residence. You got to see beautiful shots of Minneapolis and lovely shots of the vocal ensemble Cantus. Sam Kreidenweis, who is our guest, featured in that video. And we're just so glad to be able to share this with you. We're in the middle of doing interviews with all of the Leonids who will be coming with us in May. If you want to sing with the Leonids and Chor Leoni, you can check out on the link on this YouTube episode here, and you can find out how to sing in the festival singers for our Van Man Male Choral Summit, as well as if you know a young singer in the greater metro area here in Vancouver who would like to sing in our My Voice program, you can find links to sign up there as well. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and stay safe, and we'll see you next time.